Morning, everybody. Welcome to Moving Markets. Today is May the 1st. Welcome to the month of May. This is an early morning edition if you're paying attention, and that means I don't have very many people on with me live this morning. But out of necessity and some meetings coming up today, and that's why I'm dressed the way I am. Yesterday, I'm in my workout clothes, ready to go out for a run after we did the podcast, and this morning I'm getting ready to go to some meetings right after. So transformation from the workout clothes to a suit and tie this morning. But May 1st, welcome to the month of May. The markets have not opened yet. I'm doing this live about an hour and a half before the open of the market, so it's quite early my time. And this will be kind of a short version, again, because of some commitments I have this morning. But the big news of the day is going to be Apple, and it's going to be Apple's earnings report on the heels of a really poor earnings report from Google, where the stock price was down, and it was down enough to drag all the major market indexes down at least a little. Actually, the Dow and the Nasdaq managed to move into positive territory by the end of the day yesterday, which was a pretty big turnaround. But things are looking, at least right now. There's an hour and a half till the time the market opens. There's some other companies that report this morning, and things could certainly take a turn before the markets even open. But Apple, after disappointing earnings from Google, there was fear that Apple could do something similar. That their revenue would be down, that their sales would come up short, that their earnings per share would come up short, and instead they had I don't know how much of a surprise it was. It was certainly a surprise to some people. It was a surprise to every analyst because every analyst is always wrong on what they think the company is going to do. That's what every analyst has in common, is they're wrong every time they predict what a company is going to do. But Apple had some surprisingly good numbers. Apple was projected to do, I think, $2.36 per share in earnings. They came in at $2.46, so they beat that by 10 cents. Doesn't seem like a lot, but when you multiply that by the number of shares that are out there and the number of people that own Apple stock, that's actually a lot of money to beat by 10 cents on the earnings per share is a big deal. Their revenue also beat, and that might have been the bigger surprise. Revenue was down for a second quarter in a row, meaning there's a decline, just simply meaning there's a decline in revenue, but that was expected. And the revenue that they brought in exceeded the expectations of what would be brought in. So once again, the analysts were wrong. So all in all, a great day for Apple. Apple has gone through a transformation in the last couple of years. iPhone sales have gone down. New iPhone sales, and when I say gone down, the rate of sales has gone down. I think they're still selling as many or more units every quarter and every year as what they have in the past. They're just not increasing the number of new units, meaning they're not adding to the number that they sold the year before or the quarter before. The slowdown is largely due to two things. Number one, Apple is starting to price itself out, not completely out, but Apple is getting overpriced. There was a day not too long ago, 2, 3 years ago, where when Apple was coming out with a new phone, it was almost a guarantee that a certain percentage of users were going to upgrade their phone. The design of the phone might change a little bit. The size of the phone might change a little bit. The features that were added were significant enough to get people's interest and to get them to want to do that upgrade on the phone. Not the case with the last couple of upgrades. When Apple went from the iPhone 6 to the iPhone 7 to the iPhone 8, there was very little design change. And then when they made that transition, I think it might have started with the 8. When they went to the 8 and then to the 10, the price increase started to move them a little bit out of the mainstream. People started looking at the features on the phone. I was one of these people. I have an iPhone. Every member of my family, everybody in my company has an iPhone. That I provide for them. What the change was this: the new features that were added to the phone, as cool as they might sound, and I consider myself a little bit of a techno geek. And I gotta make sure I clarify that. I don't consider myself super knowledgeable on technology stuff. I'm a geek in the sense that I like the latest technology. I like to have the latest pieces of technology, and when something is upgrade, I want the new stuff. I whatever the term is for that, I fit into that category. Um, but the last couple of times Apple upgraded, the appeal for the new features did not overcome the increase in price. The phones got really expensive. They got up to where the lower end base model was upwards of $700-800, and you could easily spend $1,000-1,200 to get the newer model. You can get a really quality laptop computer for less than $1,000. I realize you can't carry a laptop computer in your pocket, and I realize that the computing power of a phone like this is 100-fold what we used to have in early laptops back in the 90s and early 2000s. So I understand that there's been this explosion of technology and of advances, but it you have to find that we hear the term in the markets when you listen to financial people on TV. Everyone likes to use the word Goldilocks when they're describing something, and the Goldilocks number for something, or the Goldilocks report. It's having that sweet spot where it's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right. It's not too hard, it's not too soft, it's just right. That Goldilocks phenomenon exists in this technology. You have a sweet spot where it's not too expensive in spite of the features, but it's not too lacking in features for the sake of a better price, and you hit that sweet spot. And I think Apple, intentional or not, they moved out of the sweet spot. They moved to the point where the price made it far less appealing to be in that line at the Apple store the morning the newest phone came out, um, to just be able to say you got the newest technology and that you got the newest upgrade. Um, I think Apple is going to have to change that if they want to improve handset sales. But the bigger story is Apple has transitioned away from that. Not that it's not still their staple product. Don't get me wrong. It's still very much their staple product. It's very much the core of what Apple is doing. And no pun intended. I said that without even thinking about that. It's still the core of their business, is the iPhone and the handset sales, and it's still a big deal, and it still should be looked at. And you don't want to see those numbers decline too far. But services is what Apple is reporting on now. They announced a couple of quarters ago that they were no longer going to report the number of units sold of their handsets. They were just going to focus on revenue, and they were going to talk about revenue brought in from their different services. Apple now has all the different services that are available through Apple TV, not just the hardware itself, but the services that come through Apple TV. They've got their Apple Pay. They've got iTunes. They've got, they've announced they're going to have their own streaming service to rival Netflix and Disney and Hulu and all these others. And Apple has made huge progress in the services sector, and that's where a larger and larger piece of their revenue is coming from. And that's absolutely brilliant. You want Apple to continue to be this innovative company. You want Apple to continue to come out with things that are going to wow us. But as an investor, and that's as a consumer, you want them to keep impressing you and surprising you with these new technological advances. As an investor, you want them to make money. You want the company to bring in huge amounts of revenue. You want their earnings to be good. You want their money to be spent wisely. I don't care if a company spends a lot of what they bring in, if they're spending it on R&D, if they're spending it on employee development, if they're going out and hiring the best talent, if they're expanding their business. Those are all good things, and it doesn't bother me when a company may have smaller profit margins if the revenue is good and the revenue is increasing, and if it's being spent in the right place. For a decade plus, Amazon was a publicly traded company that never made any money. It's probably closer to 2 decades. They never made profit. I shouldn't say they never made money. They made tons of money. They never made profit. All of their money was reinvested and put into expansion and infrastructure and build out. And I counted myself amongst the many people that scratched my head wondering, why are people buying this stock? They can't make a profit. You don't invest your money in a company that can't be profitable. I'm also one of these people that wishes I'd have bought a lot of Amazon stock a lot of years ago because the stock exploded, and it was later on justified when Amazon finally started producing so much revenue that it outgrew their spending. Um, but their spending was smart. Like him or not like him, agree with him or not agree with him. You got to tip your hat to Jeff Bezos and what he's done over there. So Apple is different because they've made a lot of profit for a long time. They've been an incredibly profitable company. At times, they've been in the lead for the most profitable company in the world, biggest market cap in the world. They were the first $1 trillion company briefly before the stock pulled back a little bit in terms of their valuation. But Apple is shifting into more services, and it's a way of keeping up with the times. You got to credit them for being smart and for doing what is going to preserve the longevity of the company, even if the innovation slows down, even if the gadgets aren't as cool, if they don't have as flashy a product launch as they used to, if they don't wow us with something brand new that we've never thought of. The reality is, if their services continue to grow and if they continue to expand and if they continue to come up with new services and new ways to get into our wallets, ultimately, as a shareholder of Apple, and full disclosure, I do own shares of Apple, but ultimately, as a shareholder of Apple, you got to be pleased with what they're doing. You got to be pleased with everything that's going on there. Um, I got to hand it to Tim Cook. He's a good businessman. I was very concerned when Steve Jobs passed away and when the reins were passed, but Tim Cook has proved to be smart and savvy. I don't always agree with him when he starts spouting off. He doesn't overly spout off politically. I like that about Tim Cook. I know mine and his politics probably don't align, probably don't even come very close, but he's not overly political in his commentary. I'm looking down at my phone right now. Headline just broke across the newswire. Private payrolls surged by $275,000 in April, blowing past estimates and the biggest gain since last year in July. More good news, more strength in the economy. I got to tell you, um, shifting a little bit to politics because that's what we do in this program. Barring a meltdown in the economy, Democrats have an uphill battle to try and defeat Trump next year. One thing that worries me a little bit is if the economy peaks, and even though things might still be vastly improved from where they were at during the Obama years, and I think that's a given. I think that happens regardless of what is in the minutia, what's in the details. But what I'm fearful of is that the economy peaks sometime this year, and we do have a little pullback or are in the midst of a pullback when we get into the primary election season and the general election season, when we're in those last few months, last 2 months maybe leading up to the elections, when whoever the Democratic nominee is having head-to-head debates with Donald Trump. Trump will debate him every day on Twitter, but when it's the actual candidate that's on a stage with Trump debating, my fear is that we're in a little bit of a slide, kind of like what we had fourth quarter of last year. That's the only thing that I can think of that could derail. Um, well, I take that back. I can think of a lot of things that could derail things. Trump could derail himself. As much as I like the policies that he creates, and as much as I like what he's doing overall for the country, regardless of how I disagree sometimes with his style and the way he goes about doing it. I like what he's doing, not always how he's doing it. That's the simple way to say it. Trump has the ability to derail himself, and that could happen. But barring him derailing himself, the only thing that's going to derail him from serving a second term is going to be if we just happen to hit a little bump in the road, and if that bump in the road comes at exactly the wrong time. That could be a problem. It's like when you're driving in your car and you've got a cup of coffee or a soda in your hand, and you hit a lot of bumps in the road, and if you're prepared for it, if that coffee cup is partway drank, or if that soda is partway down, or if it's sitting in the cup holder, that bump might be pretty meaningless. But if the cup is full and you're holding it in your hand up close to your face, and that's when you hit the bump, it spills all over you. And that's just, you're a victim of the most inconvenient timing in the world. We're going to hit some bumps as we go along. You can't have a perfect economy forever moving markets up and forever moving everything up. But if you hit the bump at just the wrong time, that can really spoil your day. And that's, barring him finding a way to derail himself, I think that's about the only thing that Trump could possibly do that will derail his chances for a second term. Folks, I'm going to wrap up right there. A little bit shorter session this morning, early morning session. I hope you enjoy. Maybe not as high energy. I'm not as passionate about what's going on, but probably because I haven't heard the Democrats say anything stupid since I was sleeping last night. If I had time to turn on the TV and listen to the news, I'm sure I would hear them saying something stupid that I would comment on, but you will have to save that for tomorrow. Hope you have a great day. Thanks. Bye.